Hello my creative friends, I'm Sonia and welcome back to my channel. It's gonna be my third and the last video about Gobelins application. Today I will tell you about the last and the most important exam, about the oral exam. This particular exam defines whether you are accepted to Gobelins Bachelor, Preparatory year or rejected. So, let's go! A little disclaimer, as always, you know that I am not a native speaker of English, so I can make mistakes and I do all my best to sound fine. But before I start, I would like to briefly summarize what I was talking about in my previous videos. So in my first video, I talked about the documents you need to give to the institute in order to start your application. If you graduated from your high school 1 or 2 years prior to your application, you can just give the documents to the institute, but if you graduated earlier, you have to ask for permission to apply. So the second stage of your application is your Tumblr portfolio. I talked about it in my second video, and I also showed you my portfolio pieces. And the third stage of application is your oral exam. If you're found admissible, you're invited for an oral exam to talk to the jury, and that's what we are going to talk about today. If you still have any remaining questions, please write to this Instagram. If you would like to have a look at some of my portfolio pieces or traditional stuff I'm currently doing, check this one. First of all, how do you get to the final exam? After the first portfolio exam, you are going to check your number in the list of admissible candidates, and if you see your number, you know that you are going to be invited for an oral exam. I like it about Gobelins that they do not share any points you got for any of the exams, because from what I heard, Gobelins is a very competitive school, and in order to avoid insecurities, it's of course better to not know what your points were. This list is going to be published on Gobelins website. If the school found you admissible, in 2 or 3 days you are going to receive an email telling about the precise time and the date of your oral exam. This year's interviews went from the 8th of April till the 15th of April, but every year the dates change. That's why you can check my previous video to look how I taught you how to navigate the Gobelins website. Let's first talk about the exam criteria. All the rules and expectations are of course written at Gobelins website and you can check them by yourself, but I will just tell you what's written in case you still didn't check them. I will leave the link to Gobelins website under my video in the description. They say that you don't have to speak any French if you are an international student, because the interview with you is going to be held in English, but if you are a French applicant, the interview with you is going to be in French and in English at the same time. Your knowledge of English must be enough to talk in English for 30 minutes straight. The final registration to the school will only take place after you bring all your originals from your Tumblr portfolio with you to the school to prove that you didn't buy any of these pieces. And it happens in September. And only after this action you're accepted. So before, when you pass 2 exams, you are still not accepted. And only after showing the jury your originals of your works, you're a Gobelins student. 1 week prior to the interview, you should upload your 5 favorite images of your choice, which you are not the author. The jury can have a look at them prior to discussing them with you. And the interview takes place in 3 stages. First one is talking about your portfolio. Second stage is discussing with you 5 favorite images you have chosen. And the third phase is just your motivational interview. And you have to finish uploading your stuff to your portfolio a week before the oral exam. And finally, we are going to the points. You get 30 points for a Tumblr portfolio. And criteria is your strong interest in drawing, creativity, artistic sensibility, also ability to search for graphic trends, analyze them and express yourself through any form of visual exploration. The second criteria is presentation of the 5 images of your choice, which you are not the author. They are gonna judge you your level of culture, open-mindedness and curiosity for art in all forms, and reasoning with relation with references. For this criteria, you get also 30 points. Then your motivational interview. They judge if your expectations go along with the program. For this one, you get 40 points, and the last criteria is your level of English. For this one, you get 20 points. For the oral exam, Gobelins uses BB Collaborate, which I hate with all my big heart. It's just a French version of Zoom. In order to avoid any problems, you must have a perfect internet. Because if you don't, you will either have no sound, or you will hear some demonic robot sounds from hell during the interview. And it's almost impossible to fix. So when it's the date of your interview, you just click on the link the Gobelins sent you with the email telling that you went for the oral exam, and you straight go into the waiting room. You have to log into the call 45 minutes prior to your interview time to check video and audio quality. You also have to bring with yourself passport to prove your identity, because it's a very important exam. And then you just have to wait for a time. Again, I'm talking about the oral exam online because, as far as I know, nobody had an opportunity to have an in-person exam yet, because there was very difficult time in the world. Also, great news for all my international fellows. You don't have to go to France for an oral exam anymore. Now, all the internationals go through the oral exam online because Gobelins cares about you and they do not want you to carry all of your heavy stuff with you for an oral exam, spend too much money, because you know, if you go through the oral exam offline, you have to bring your works with you. Even though I wanted to go to France to take an oral exam in person to make a performance out of my giant paper folder, I had no such opportunity. Even if the year of your application is normal and you would like to go to France to have an oral exam, you must ask for it, because just all the internationals go online by default. Another important thing I wanted to tell you is thinking about your appearance. From the applicants from the past, I heard very scary stories. For example, one boy came to the in-person oral exam in a very strange t-shirt with poorly drawn Mickey Mouse, and it drew very negative attention of the jury and he was rejected. Of course, I do not think he was rejected only because he wore some kind of a t-shirt. I think that appearance can also influence your oral exam, so you should think about it. Also, you have to consider the general mood of your interview and show yourself from the best side. You know, you don't have to be 100% honest with the jury and tell about all the hardships you went through while applying. It may give the jury their own idea about your personality, so try to not complain. I was very frustrated because I couldn't go to France at that time, but at the same time I had lots of benefits from staying online. First of all, I could decorate my room with my artworks to interact with them while talking to the jury. I believe that on every candidate there is 1 or 2 jury members, because there are a lot of people applying every year, about 1,000. 3 jury members would be too much. So in case if you know that your friend has the same time and the same day of oral exam, don't be afraid. You are still going to have your separate conversation with the jury, because there are lots of jury members who work at the same time. So back in the days when I had my oral exam, I filmed a video recreating the things I did during my oral exam, so you're going to see it. In the waiting room you can meet other applicants, because they're also waiting for their turn. And my biggest fear during the day of my exam wasn't the exam itself, but it was the ability to meet some of my ex-classmates or any other people I knew, because in case I would be rejected, I didn't want anyone to know that I even applied. Fortunately, I didn't meet anyone, but instead I met some of my fellow applicants who later became my classmates. When it's your time of an interview, you got separated into a different room where you can meet your jury. My jury were 2 very pleasant French professors And they were definitely not the teachers from the first year, as I already know. Especially for the exam, I wrote and learned by heart a little introduction of myself in French, because I wanted to tell about myself in French first. I learned French for 5 months prior to application. I still wasn't able to speak fluently enough to speak by myself, so I wrote a speech.
Je rêvais de devenir le concepteur et réalisateur de films d'animation dès l'âge de 5 ans, quand j'ai vu le film de Sylvain Chomet, Les Triplettes de Belleville, qui m'a beaucoup impressionné. Et c'est pour cette raison qu'après l'école, je suis entrée au lycée cinématographique de l'animation et de mass media à Moscou.
I was very happy that the examinators understood what I was talking about. So the first thing the jury told me was that they liked the amount of my works in my portfolio. As I already told you, I had 400 pieces, and it was a very good sign. The jury will of course ask you about your background to get to know you better during your interview. One of the trickiest things, in my opinion, is the questions about your dream job you want to get after your bachelor in animation. As I already told you, the goal of this bachelor is to make a good animator and concept artist out of you. So if you say that you would like to be a director, it would be a mistake. So I, for example, told that I would like to try different professions from storyboarding and character design to animation, because I know that Gobelins gives complex education and you can become whoever you want after you graduate.
Yes, I know, like Sergio Pablos told that he prefers artists who can do several things like concept art, maybe at the same time storyboard and animation. So I would like to be able to switch between professions.
The worst thing about my oral exam was that the jury didn't share their screen with me, so I didn't see my portfolio, and they constantly asked me to tell them about the pieces I liked, and I was so nervous that I forgot all the pieces I have done during the past years, and I was like, what should I tell you about? So the first thing I remembered was the film two my friends from my school and I made in Germany in 2018. It was a good example of teamwork and participation in festivals. Also, I talked about the Goose and Girl project I made with the same team. As you know, Gobelins is a very team-oriented school, and they appreciate your every teamworking experience. The jury can ask you about your personal preferences. So, for example, I was asked about my favorite directors in animation and in feature films. I talked about Sylvain Chomet. From past years' applicants, I heard that it's better to name some directors who are not as mainstream as Burton and Miyazaki. You need to prepare the names of your favorite directors. And I would also recommend you to briefly analyze the work of a director you like. So, for example, I chose Sylvain Chomet and I talked about his film Illusionist. And I briefly mentioned how I liked the color palette of his films, how his animation was very exaggerated but at the same time very realistic, and the audience can just notice someone in the film they saw in real life. Another my favorite director at this time I talked about was Paolo Sorrentino. Maybe you know, he was the director of The Youth and The Young Pool. And I also talked about the composition, the color palette. Again, the jury pointed out my attempts into 3D. You know, if you try to animate with different medias, it of course will draw the jury's attention, because it's a good thing. It means you are curious. Gobelins also asked me if I was okay with having no animation assignments in the first year and having only basics, and you can just guess what I answered. Of course, yes. It's always better to study longer and learn more basics, because it's never enough basics. Going into the animation industry being not prepared, it's the most scary thing for me. The jury can also ask you unexpected questions. So, for example, I was asked about the book I was currently reading. Of course, I wasn't reading anything at the moment because I was very busy with the application, but the last book I read was Karamazov Brothers by Dostoevsky, and I also briefly introduced the writer to the jury, talked a little bit about him and about his books, analyzing the plot structure, analyzing the personalities of his characters. As I was online, I was able to decorate my room with my works I liked the most. So when the jury asked me again if I wanted to tell them about my favorite pieces, I just turned around and pointed at some of my artworks and decided to talk about them.
And this one is one of my favorites. It was for poetry exhibition for some Russian very abstract poet, so I had to imagine my own story to illustrate his poetry.
I laid my giant storyboard under my table and I was just
To show you that all of my storyboards were made traditionally, so I did it I think in maybe 1 week and a half, so it's pretty big one.
Then the jury asked me to show my paintings, which I also placed behind my back to draw the jury's attention to them.
The one I made in my courses, so this one is another one with belly dancer. I like how I drew the foot.
And prior to my exam, I measured the weight of my paper folder and it was 6 kilograms of sketches. I just wanted to bring some laughter to my interview, so I showed it to the jury and they laughed, so I was right. So it's just my way of communication. I was also able to stand up and show my interviewers the giant paper folder I would take with me if I would be allowed to go to France. And luckily I didn't go to France because I guess I wouldn't be allowed to bring it. Last but not the least, I showed my little clay model of poor cherry boy who is to vote for Sofia, like Hulk. After talking about your portfolio and talking about yourself, the jury are going to propose you to talk about the 5 images you like. If you went to the oral exam in person, you would have to print them out at A4 paper to bring them to the jury. So first of all, you can choose whatever you want. When I applied, there was zero information about what we were allowed to choose as our favorite picture, so I just chose some paintings, drawings and some animation related stuff. But later I saw that some of my classmates chose decorations, interior design, comics, photography and even fashion shows. So you can just choose whatever. Pieces you bring to the jury show your personal preferences as an artist, so you need to take it pretty serious. I will just quickly tell you about what I chose for my oral exam. So the first picture is The Hunters in the Snow by Bruegel, or Bruegel as we call him in Russia. I like this painting a lot and I love the color palette and I'm obsessed with the miniature on the background. This was that very painting that influenced me when I was trying to make backgrounds for the Gusen Girl project. The second one is a self-portrait by Egon Schiele. I love his style and he influenced me a lot when I was a child. Ivan Bilibin was chosen as one of the representatives of Russian culture. Even in this exam I wanted to show my identity and interest in my own cultural heritage. So Ivan Bilibin is one of the most famous Russian artists. He's famous for his unique style and illustrations, and his style is copied by everyone right now because he's very popular. The fourth artist I have chosen was Isaac Levitan, and this painting is called Over the Eternal Peace. Is a great painter and his landscapes are adorable. I love him. The fifth work I have chosen was a frame from the film by Sylvain Chomet, Illusionist, and I wanted to talk briefly about the film itself. And the sixth work is by Carter Goodrich. It's my most favorite character design of Grimmel the Grizzly, my favorite character of all time. And for a long time I couldn't choose between Nico Marlet, who is the alumni of Gobelins, and Carter Goodrich, but in the end the love won. So why did I choose 6? I don't know. I was just scared and I didn't know if I could include the character designs into the 5 images of my choice. So I just decided to upload the 6th one, so in case it was forbidden to talk about character designs, I would just remove it. I would recommend you to prepare a speech about every single picture you have chosen, because it will help you to be more confident during your oral exam. So right now I will go to my experience and I will just simply retell you what I told to the jury, almost word by word, because I remember it as though it was yesterday. So the first picture the jury decided to talk about was Egon Schiele, of course.
So Egon Schiele is one of my favorite artists of all time. When I was pretty young, about 10 or 12, I first saw his pictures, not nudes. My parents didn't show me any nudes at this time. So I was able to go to Leopold's museum in Austria to make some to copy his artwork. I was so impressed by his lines. So he's such a dynamic artist. I love how he works with camera angles and with anatomy. All his artworks, like this particular one, which is his self-portrait, is very stylized, caricature, but at the same time it's very anatomically correct.
And that's what I would like to have in my personal work. And the jury told me that they saw such intention in my sketches, and I was very happy to hear that. I was asked about the abstract side of his work, and I was like lost. I didn't know what it meant. So I decided to talk about the exaggeration in movement and anatomy and in the beauty of his lines and the silhouettes in his work, but it was not enough. The jury kept asking me questions about this particular work. So for example, they asked me about the color, what I can say about the color. So it seems to me that Chile doesn't even paint, he draws with oil. And he uses very modest palette, but at the same time it looks gorgeous. Then the jury thought for a while and they decided to pick up another artist, and it was Levitan. So the Levitan is like another direction, he is a painter. I think that Levitan conveys Russian ambience, the giant sky and the flat earth. And his work made me think about the backgrounds, that they have to be detailed, but at the same time they shouldn't distract the audience's eyes from the main characters. And the main characters in this particular painting was a little church and a cemetery. And even though the whole composition place is dedicated to the sky, our eyes are still drawn to the church, and it means the composition is very well done.
Eternal quietness at the same time means the sky, and at the same time means the people who are rest in peace in this place. So Levitan is magnificent. Of course, it's better to watch his artworks in originals in Tretyakovsky gallery, but
it was a pretty fun painting to talk about. That was my interview. Even though the interview must take about 30 minutes, the jury talked to me only for 20 minutes, and they were like, okay, fine, thank you, goodbye, we have nothing to ask you about. After the interview, I was very proud of myself, I was very happy, and I thought that I did everything I could to apply. And all the rest depended on the jury decision. Please don't be desperate if you didn't get accepted at Gobelins, because there are lots of different cool and famous French animation schools around. For example, there is ESMA, there is ASA, there is École Émile Coll, École Georges Méliès, there is also Poudrière, Lisa, Rubica, and if you are interested in French animation schools, you can just give your documents to several French animation institutes at the same time and await for the results. If Gobelins accepts you, you can go to Gobelins. If Gobelins rejects you, you have another opportunity and another school to go to. If you receive a bachelor in another institute, you can still apply to Gobelins master's degree. So in the end of my application series, I would like to tell you once again, please be yourselves, and you will find the way to the hearts of the jury. They would like to see lots of different guys in the school. Be yourselves and show your personality. So for example, laughing and telling jokes is just my way of conversation, and you can just show your way of conversation. You don't have to be a stand-up comic to pass the exams. It's just my style. You see, today I am in the clothes of a clown. I am a clown. I am here to make you laugh. Please, if you like this video and if you found it useful, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel, because I still have lots of things to tell you about. Thank you so much for watching my video, and I will see you later. Goodbye. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.